Hello, 2020 audience. Welcome. Welcome to the 2020 series presented by the New York Film Academy. The 2020 series are conversations with amazing creative visionaries about craft, creativity, and collaboration. I'm Liz Hinlein, creative director and filmmaker. I have with me the amazing, awesome director, producer, executive producer, incredible visionary, Rebecca Halpern. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
It's so great. And also, audience, what I want to tell you is we're going to do 20 minutes of shop talk and then 20 minutes of answering questions. So please write into the Q&A. We'll try to get to them and get you up to speed with all the brilliance that Rebecca has. So Rebecca, there's going to be a really, I didn't ask you this before because this is such a naive question, but what, this is asked to me all the time. What is the difference between unscripted, documentary, and reality?
That's a good question. Well, so there's two sides of the business. There's scripted and unscripted. So unscripted is the big umbrella term that we use to encompass everything from documentary to game show, cooking shows, formatted competition series, you name it. It's just sort of that catch-all bucket. And the scripted side is more drama, scripted narrative, comedy, sitcoms, all of that sort of thing. I specialize mostly in factual documentary series. I've developed some competition series, food shows, things of that nature, but I operate mostly in the unscripted space.
So is there a difference, because reality was a big term that was bantered around for a while. I don't know if it's as popular now, but how do you as a producer look at the difference between reality and documentary / unscripted?
So reality to me is more like follow doc, right? It's more like you've got the cameras on set. It's very verite focused and much more story driven in post. Whereas, factual doc, historical doc to me is more sit down interview, A roll and B roll, your traditional kind of factual assemblage of the storytelling. So you're not doing so much verite per se.
And how did reality get such a bad sort of connotation?
Well, I mean, one of the things I always hear when I'm developing series is we need louder, bigger characters. So the Real Housewives, for example, the characters don't get much bigger than that. Or, the drama needs to be like super salacious or a little bit kind of over the top. And, some people as producers gravitate towards that kind of thing. They just have a knack for casting and finding the characters in the world, and other people don't. I'm not one of those people. I mean, I can see a character when I know one when I see one, but my natural instinct is to look more at concepts and ideas and then explore ways of bringing those to the screen as a factual documentary rather than we're having some technical difficulties over here, rather than as a reality project, if that makes any sense.
That makes total sense. And so do you go out and do you look for ideas? Is that part of your day job to sort of do you read the paper? What do you do to sort of fill that well?
So I do a lot of things. I'm directing my first feature documentary right now, which is about a chef in Chicago named Chef Charlie Trotter. I showrun and produce factual documentary series. I just came off a 6-part series for Epix Network called Helter Skelter about Charles Manson in the 1960s, which was directed by Leslie Chilcott, who is a genius director, producer. She produced An Inconvenient Truth with Davis Guggenheim, which was incredible. And then when I'm not staffed or I'm not fully engaged in another project, I develop my own ideas. So I'm constantly on the lookout for things that I think are either undercover, haven't been covered very extensively, or are new ways into an old subject matter that might enlighten or illuminate something new about it. or if I have access or meet someone who has access to an interesting world, or a, you know, like a cache of materials, maybe archival materials that should really see the light of day, that's what gets me going. And it's like a spark or a firework that goes off in my brain, and it kind of crackles for me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a show. And then I'll take it and try to translate it to some real world IP, so that with that intellectual property, I'm giving the idea credibility that maybe it didn't have before. And then I'm crafting it into a series, a documentary series, and then pitching it. So that's pretty much the process.
Do you find, now that you've been doing this successfully for, you know, a while, that there are ideas that are in the zeitgeist? Like if you're thinking about it, someone else over some part of the world is also, like, do you find that similar films, like there's multiple Charlie Manson projects that have come out or will come out, or how has that worked, do you think?
No, I mean, that happens all the time. Usually if one person has an idea for something, a dozen other people have that idea. So how do you make your ideas stand out? Well, there's a handful of ways that you do that. One is through the concept. Can you come up with a way into that idea that's different from anything else that's ever been done before? That's one. Two, who can you attach to your project that can help elevate it and draw more eyeballs? What A-list celebrity can you bring into your package or your fold to make the project seem more marketable to a network or a streamer? I use those terms kind of interchangeably these days. And then the third idea, or the third aspect of making your package really stand out, is what intellectual property exists in the world. What kind of like journalistic deep dive can I do as a producer to really help augment the storytelling? So for example, I developed a series about Lee Harvey Oswald, and I happened to get access to a trove of personal correspondence and documentation from his mother. After he died, she basically went on a public relations campaign to change the narrative around her son and the assassination. And so I use that as the way in to tell that story. I'm working on a project about the Cold War right now, which is super interesting. And we're coming at it through the lens of a journalist who was accused of being an FBI, KGB, and CIA spy. And I actually pitched that as a documentary series. I'm working on it with Jim Parsons, and That's Wonderful Productions. And they came back to me and said they didn't want to do it as a series. They wanted to do it as a feature scripted film. So we're looking at doing it both ways at this point, but that's a really interesting way in. You know, I think the key to a great idea, and the best compliment I always get when I don't always get it, but the best compliment I get when I pitch is, why has no one ever thought of that before?
And so why do you think that, well, what is it that you, because obviously, you know, as we all know, like there's no new idea, but there's a new way of packaging, approaching it, thinking about it. Where is it just your natural genius, or is there something that you try to pivot or look at it like from a humanistic point of view, or is there a way you approach it differently?
The thing I love about producing and coming up with ideas is that our whole life experience is brought to bear on the ideas that we come up with. You can call it genius, you can call it creativity, you can be the most informed person on the planet and watch and read everything there is to see and have a sense of knowledge of, like, you know, what's out there, what's not out there. I don't approach my projects from that perspective. I find that to be actually kind of limiting. Networks will often distribute what are called mandates, where they detail out exactly what they're looking for in a particular new series or whatever. I pay attention to those to a certain extent, but I'm not actively searching out ideas that I think will satisfy those mandates. For me, it's as much a personal journey to find the things that excite me as it is, you know, as it is a business endeavor where you don't want to waste time on something that's not going to go anywhere. But, you know, I just think it just comes to me in a very sort of mercurial way. And I find the more that I'm actually out in the world and seeing things and experiencing things, the more ideas start to come to me. And that's been a bit of a challenge with the pandemic.
Totally.
You know.
And that makes total sense, because sometimes if you're inundated, if you're just consistently watching Netflix 24/7, in your subconscious, you're going to be derivative. There's no way that you can't just, how are you going to have new ideas if you don't have new experiences yourself?
Exactly. And, you know, I think that ideas are informed by your whole universe of existence. So it's, where do they come from? They can come from anywhere. A great meal, an outing to a museum. I mean, some of my best ideas come from going for a walk in the park. Like, you just don't know, where they're going to come from. I developed a series for National Geographic. It was actually a pilot that got picked up, about the elements of the periodic table. And my producing partner had called me and said, you know, a lot of networks are looking for science programming. What do you have in that space? Do you have any ideas or thoughts? And I was living in Chicago at the time, and I was laying on my couch, and it was a huge blizzard, and I saw all the snowflakes falling out of my window. And all of a sudden, something keyed in for me in my brain. Why has no one ever done a series about the elements of the periodic table? 118 unique things that make up everything that the world is.
Right.
Our computers, me, you, all of it. It's 118 things. And how do we communicate the lessons that are to be learned from the power of the elements to people who maybe don't care about science? That's, you know, and that for me was like, it just hit me like a spark. You know, you can look at any major historical event through the lens of the scientific properties and the power of the elements. Hydrogen and the Hindenburg, you know, and so I created the elements, and we pitched it, and I can talk to you more about that if you like, Liz. Or
well, I wanted, you know, because you have this two amazing pieces of video that I want to show. But before we do that, so you have the idea, it's great, you're sparked, you're like, okay, how do I pitch it? Do I make a written treatment? Like, how do you get to even is a sizzle reel just what's expected at this point?
So here's the process that I go through. So I get this amazing idea on my couch looking at the blizzard outside, and I think to myself, okay, the first question I ask is, has anything else been done in this space about the periodic table? So I'll look at all of my, you know, I'll Google and see what other television or documentary projects have been done about it. Then I'll take it one step further and say, what other kinds of media have been done about it? Are there any interactive websites that feature the elements of the periodic table? What about YouTube channels? What kinds of books have been written? And are any of these books or ideas or media that's out there targeted in the same way that I'm targeting my idea, which is human history and how the elements have controlled human history? So I'm looking for that fit to try to find a piece of IP that I can connect to my idea. And I happened to come across this book called The Disappearing Spoon that was written by author Sam Keane. It's a great book, and it goes in a little more detail into the science than I would normally go, but it definitely touched on that human history piece. And so I reached out to Sam and his agent. I did a shopping agreement for the book, which basically gave me the exclusive right to represent that the book was part of the project. And then I set about crafting a paper treatment that sort of outlines the idea for the series. And from there, I created a sizzle reel, which is a 2 to 3 minute long rip reel of footage that exists in the world that helps articulate what the idea actually is.
So you needed to take this around to executives who may or may not be interested in science.
Right. So the goal was to pitch this as a premium blue chip television documentary series. And I say television loosely. It could be streamers or anybody, you know, or, you know, cable networks, that kind of thing. to sell it to them as a multi-episode, multi-part series. You know, there's 118 elements in the periodic table. The format was one element per episode. So in theory, the series could go 118 episodes. Right. And that's the other thing that you want to look for, is like the long running, long range planning of your ideas, because these take a long time. You don't want to create something that's just going to take, you know, be four episodes and gone. I mean, 118 episodes is incredible. So, but we pitched it as, I think it was 12 episodes at first, one element per episode. And the idea actually was that the elements themselves would narrate their own stories. That's and we would anthropomorphize the elements and give them humanistic qualities that people could really relate to, as another way in that goes beyond science, that's not just technical, if that makes sense. It's more emotionally driven.
Totally.
We've had I had a lot of firsts with this project. One being that there were several occasions when executives asked to watch it twice in the room, which was really mind-blowing. My editor on this project, Daniel Algarin, who's my partner on many, many projects, is a genius. And he found M83's music cue, which we used, which really, this was created before M83 became so ubiquitous and popular, and everyone just was like mind blown about the music on this. So I'm really proud of this Sizzle Reel. I think it makes people want to know more. It makes them ask questions. I will say that in the unscripted business, there's a competing dialogue that happens around Sizzle Reels. How much of the show do you have to tell people, and how much do you want to make them feel? And because when you pitch a series, the person you're pitching to is going to take that and show it to a team of people, and they likely won't be able to do the same, you know, kind of a job that you can do articulating your own ideas, right? So the trick is to include enough information that they get a sense of what it is. But in my opinion, you know, I don't think, some people say you have to hold hands and really show A to B to C. In every episode, you'll get one element, a different, right. You know, whatever. But that to me sort of muddies the premium quality of the work that we're actually producing, which is art, not commerce. So that's where I come in at.
Well, that makes so much sense, because you're also giving room in the room for your new, whatever that production partner is, to have ideas. You're not saying it's this didactic, it's going to be clink, clink, clink. They can interpret it. Oh, we could see a whole show with, you know, if they came back and said, let's do 5 elements in one show.
And it's so interesting you should say that, Liz, because so often I will always, like when I partner up with a journalist, or I partner up with a book author or someone in the world that I want to make a documentary about, I always tell them that the closest thing we're going to get to the show that we want to make is right now. Wow. From this point forward, until it makes the air, you're going to have so many people inserting their own opinions, their own viewpoints, their own interpretations about it, that we better make it as solid as we can up front, so that, you know, at the end, it's not just a completely different project from what you had originally created. And that's why we make style reels as well. Right. So in the case of the elements, we pitched it to National Geographic. They came back to us and said, we'll give you a certain amount of money to further develop the series, create a show Bible, create a style reel, really give us a sense of what the series is going to be, and attach an A-list celebrity talent, visionary talent, who can be an executive producer on the project.
Wow.
And if you can do all of that and it's done to our satisfaction, we will greenlight a certain number of episodes for you.
It's like the Wizard of Oz, basically.
It's like yeah, exactly.
On the broom of the witch and bring it back.
Right, exactly. So what I did was I partnered up with a company out of Kansas City called MK12. MK12 are genius graphic designers, animators. They're amazing. One of the things I wanted to do with this series was come at it from a bunch of different visual directions to keep it interesting for the audience all the way through. Again, thinking along the lines of human stories versus scientific stories so that people were really engaged. And I created this style reel with them to go along with the package that we presented as part of our second wave of development. So.
And so with this type of thing, so now you have two partners that you're sort of in the working to get this show. I mean, at least you have the design partners, you have your editor partner. Are you giving them leeway in creativity?
So the production partnerships from a business perspective look like this. The network buys the series on the basis of a budget that you drum up based on what you imagine the series to be. Mm-hmm. Then you're beholden to them, basically. Then you partner with a production company of record that physically makes the project for you. Mm-hmm. And they are responsible for hiring the editors and everyone else, obviously with your own input, depending on your role. Like me as a creative producer, director person, I'm fortunate in that I get a little more input than maybe somebody who just is a guy off the street who comes up with a great idea, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's been kind of my driving force as a producer, is to have enough creative credibility, whether it's active credits as a director, showrunner, developer, to have enough creative credibility where my ideas are taken seriously, so that when it does come time to hire the right creative team, they trust me to implement my own ideas in the right way. So, and as far as their creativity goes, Liz, the best projects, you know this, mm-hmm. happen when everyone feels like they have a vested creative interest in the Very process. True. So,
and I'm just sort of curious, this is off a tangent. Have you thought about being a production company yourself as opposed to a single sole entrepreneur?
So I have my own shingle, Rebecca Halpern Productions, which I would obviously, if I went on to do more, would change. The thing for me about my own production company is doing what I do, partnering with production companies, pitching my own ideas. It's a great shortcut if you don't want to assume the risk mm-hmm. of the financial aspect of it. All I have to do is sell my ideas and get people to believe in them. Granted, that's what a production company does too. Mm-hmm. But I'm super, super fortunate insofar as having partners in the business who are best in class, who believe in me and enable me to sort of take the ball and run with it creatively. So
that's amazing. And then I have this is sort of a personal thing. I knew you came up as an athlete in golf and stuff like that. And I also came up through sports. And I just want to hear, how has being, especially at the level you were collegiate and beyond athlete, has that informed you as a filmmaker?
You know, I've been thinking a lot about this lately, working on my feature. I wake up at about 5:30 every morning without an alarm clock. I roll out of bed, I make coffee, and I sit down and I work. The morning time is my most creative time. And the sooner I can get into my work, the more in the flow I'll get, and the more in the zone I'm going to get. The more ideas are going to come to me, the more things are going to happen. And when I was training as an athlete, I was training in much the same way. I rolled out of bed. I had the same process the same routine every morning, down to what I ate. I was eating the same thing every day. Like, it was crazy. And in that repetition, I found it freed me up mm-hmm. in a really big way to just kind of plumb the depths of my own creativity as a feature film director, or as an athlete, getting a better, deeper understanding of what it takes to succeed in that sport. I've always been a bit of a workaholic. I've always loved digging into, practicing till my fingers bled. And I do the same thing in my creative pursuits. If I'm not creating, if I'm not, using my skills to the best of my ability, which requires time, 10,000 hours, Malcolm Gladwell's, somebody, I was playing golf with somebody once, and they said to me, man, how'd you hit that? How'd you get to be that good? How'd you hit that shot? And I just said 10,000 hours. And it's true. That's what it takes, that level of commitment, and repetition, and doing it over and over and over again, and honing your approach with each new endeavor or each chance that you get. So
that's exactly it. That's so great. Okay, so we have a bazillion questions here, so I'm going to pull out some of the hat. So Josephine asks, so I usually get a lot of ideas. The problem is I'm too afraid. How if there's other people that already have those ideas, the copyright issues? How do you be confident and just go to make your ideas on screen? Like, I guess, is that through research, knowing what's being pitched?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all goes back to what real world tangible assets can you attach to your project to make it real and take it beyond just an idea. One thing I won't develop are like just competition series, like game show ideas, right? Like The Bachelor or, some other idea, because to me, anyone can have that idea. That doesn't really, a production company that has an in-house executive who they pay on salary to come up with ideas like that, who have the wherewithal to go and turn those ideas very quickly and pitch them, is in a much better position to get a sale than I am as an independent producer who has to go all over town trying to build my relationships and get somebody to believe in it and all of that. No. If I walk in and I say, listen, I just signed the lead female mastermind of the FBI's Mindhunter unit, which I just did, by the way, and I'm about to start pitching that project. If I walk in with that, then it's like, boom, we want to be part of that. We want her. We want to know more about that world. So it's, whatever you can do to attach real world IP or people or, anything, access, anything like that, the better.
That's a really great way to put that. And I'm just curious, on your project on Helter Skelter, which I just love, and I just think it's just inventively put together, where did you come in on the process of that?
So I started very early in the process while we were still trying to identify interviewees and understand what the story was that we were wanting to tell. Leslie Chilcott, who was the director, she was very keen on producing this 6-part series like a feature documentary. And so it was very much a linear process in that regard. We had 4 editors working on 6 episodes, all brilliant, and each brought their own unique style and taste and sensibility to each episode, which I thought was really great. We had 2 story producers who took what our interviewees were saying and who mined like 10,000 hours, I don't know how many thousands of hours of archival footage to help stitch together the right storyline for the series. And so I came in very early. My role predominantly was to support Leslie in helping her realize whatever that vision was that she was looking to do.
And what was your, like, why did you say yes to that job as opposed to a different job? Was it the story of Charlie Manson, or what was intriguing for you?
Well, first things first, it was the opportunity to work with Leslie, who is so well respected and such an incredible talent. So that was the first thing. Second of all, to be part of a project where I had a high degree of confidence that the quality of the work was going to be representative of my own brand was really exciting. And thirdly, for my own personal reasons, I didn't have a fresh managerial or show running type credit in a long time, and I needed to get back in the game a little bit, especially now directing my own feature, which is a similar process. So
it's all really interesting, and it is about the collaboration and the gang and being so excited with the team you're put together or allowed to work with, or how that synergy all happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're going to, Abyssala asks, how do you decide when to put fictional elements or personal additions into a documentary based on fact?
So I would say the most creative leeway you have to fictionalize what you're looking at are the visuals in documentaries. So many documentaries these days are doing so many really interesting things with regards to reenactments, recreations, visualizing the story that's being told using a metaphorical representational element or device. And so to me, that's where that comes in. I think audiences are savvy enough to know these days that if they're watching a documentary that has a reenactment in it, it is told through someone's creative lens that is likely not rooted in the factual. I will say that Leslie on Helter Skelter went to the nth degree to recreate, like for example, Spahn Ranch, where the Manson family lived, to recreate that to the letter, and it was remarkable watching how far she would go to push the team to get it to a point where it was 100% accurate. And you know, a lot of people in this business or in life in general don't want to go to the nth degree, right? They want to stop at like 85%. And this is where the sports analogy comes in as well. You know, you get what you get out of something what you put into something. And the difference between someone who is making an Oscar-winning film and someone who is making YouTube videos is that, and not just any YouTube, I'm talking about like schlocky, you know, stuff that nobody wants to watch, is that effort. That's the difference.
Exactly. And it's the fast, cheap, and good, you know, in that basic thing. If you want to do it fast, you know, the network wants to turn it over fast. Everyone wants to get it out fast. There's things you have to fight against.
I will say I agree, but I disagree insofar as the speediness of it. Because I think if you have the experience, if you have the network, if you have a show like Leslie's team of creative professionals that she works with, her DPs and her graphic designers, all of that, she has a shorthand with them where she can get to the, you know, she can get to that level very quickly. So it doesn't require the same machinations that it would for maybe a first timer who doesn't have a network of people. So I would recommend to anyone who's watching this, if you want to get into film, grow your network now. This is, you know, when you're learning, when you're a student and you have all these people you're learning with, make them your best friends, especially the most talented ones. Identify who those people are, bring them in close and keep them there. Because if you start to, you know, if you think this is a one-man job, you are so mistaken. It's a team effort from start to finish.
That's exactly true. That's such great advice. And it is, you know, especially when you're at film school or beyond, or you're on sets, you know, these are your peers. And that also goes for in the industry, I find as well. It's not competition. You don't know, you'll be working with this person or you will hire this person.
I tell all my mentees in their 20s, I say to them, you know, your 20s, you may not know ultimately what you want to be doing when you're 35 or 40 or 45. But you will know who you want to work with. So now is the time to build your network. Focus on that more. That's more important, I think.
That's great. Rebecca, we just started and now we're about to close, sadly. So tell us where if we want to like research you or maybe even have a question, where could we find you?
Sure. So I have a website. It's RebeccaHalpern.com. You can find me on Instagram at Rebecca Halpern. I'm wearing a big hat with a lot of, you know, big gray hat in my picture, so you can see me there. If you want to watch Helter Skelter, all 6 episodes are available on Epix on demand or on Amazon as an Amazon channel. Epix is an Amazon channel. My feature film will be coming out next spring. So Being Charlie Trotter is the working title. I'll keep you guys all posted if that changes. You can also follow me on Twitter. So I'm all over the place. Reach out, I'll answer.
Oh my God, this has been so great. It's been like a masterclass for me about unscripted documentary, making things happen, making brilliant work.
Thank you, Liz. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with everyone. And I see there's 21 questions that have not been answered. So if anybody, please don't be afraid to reach out. I'll do my best to get back to everybody.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, New York Film Academy. And we love the 2020 series. Thank you so much. Bye, Rebecca.
Thanks, guys. Bye.